meeting of the newly formed 1916 Relatives Association. In particular, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our overseas diaspora who are joining us over the internet, and we indeed look forward to their comments and participation this afternoon. By way of introduction, my name is Dave Kilmartin. I'm on the committee and chairperson of the 1916 Relatives Association. I'm now going to hand you over to Una McNulty, who is Secretary of the Association, and Una is going to read a statement on behalf of the 1916 Relatives Association. Over to you, Una. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming today to the 1916 Relatives Association Special General Meeting. As Dave said, I'm Una McNulty and I'm the Secretary of the 1916 Relatives Association. My grandfather and my granduncle, Padder and Michael McNulty, were members of the Irish Volunteers A Company 1st Battalion Dublin Brigade, and they fought in Church Street, Brunswick Street and North King Street and were part of the Four Courts Garrison. It's wonderful to stand before you all and see so many familiar faces from our WINS meeting, and I would like to extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to you all, and especially to all our new members who joined us over the last number of months and today. So, as those of you who attended know, the majority of our first meeting in WINS was given over to listening to and recording your concerns regarding the government's lack of preparations for the 1916 centenary. A couple of weeks after the WINS meeting, in early July, just before the cabinet reshuffle, the 1916 Relatives Committee met the then Minister of Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht, Jimmy Deanahan, and a number of civil servants. We presented them with the concerns you raised at the WINS meeting, most specifically the lack of any planning by the government to commemorate 1916. At that meeting, we were assured that we would be presented with an outline of the government's plans for the 1916 centenary commemoration by mid-September of this year. To date, we haven't been presented with any plans, nor have we been able to get a meeting with the now Minister for Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht, Heather Humphreys. We have also had a number of communications with officials from the Department of Defence, and what they are telling us is that they don't know what's happening in 2016 either, nor are they aware of any government plans. And by the way, Heather Humphreys was invited to attend today, but she declined. So I'll read you some extracts from the letter she sent us, okay? So this is what it says. I am directed by the Minister for Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht to refer to your invitation to the Minister to be keynote speaker at your inaugural special general meeting at the Alexandra Hotel. The Minister regrets that prior commitments preclude her attendance at this special general meeting. The Minister appreciates your advice that the meeting will consider several issues of mutual interest. The initiative to mark the Hoth gun running centenary, as current evidence would suggest that there would not have been a commemoration if they had not stepped in. While community involvement and participation is vital, the government must take ownership of all commemorations as they celebrate the events which led to the foundation of our state. The government must provide resources and guidance to ensure that all commemorations are always historically accurate and reflect the enormous bravery shown by our relatives in taking on the might of the British Empire. This government chooses to hugely underestimate the enormous emotional attachment and respect that Irish people at home and abroad have for the women and men of 1916. I call on Irish people at home and overseas to join us now to ensure that the 1916 centenary is marked in a fitting and dignified manner, and that all these events are accessible to the people of Ireland and not just dignitaries and VIPs. Is this government aware that nations all over the world who had to fight for their independence and liberation looked to the Easter Rising for inspiration and hope? At the meeting in Winds, some of you remember Sister Cora Richardson and how she spoke of her work fighting against apartheid in South Africa. She told us that many African leaders she spoke to and African writers she read spoke of being encouraged by the deeds of our forefathers. They believed that if a tiny nation like ours could take on the might of the British Empire, so could they. The 1916 Relatives Association don't think we're more entitled or deserving than Irish people without family connections. However, we insist that all those who participated in 1916 have a right to be represented and thus remembered at commemorative events. We, as their living representatives, should be consulted about and included in all commemorative events to ensure that they and their brave deeds are remembered and honoured in a fitting manner. As relatives of the women and men of 1916, we have an important role to play in bringing our ancestors' stories to the Irish people at home and all over the world. Its own, a website of its own, an email address of its own, a newsletter of its own. And this is to ensure the clear communication and publicity of the events as they are happening. It is clear that given the lacklustre approach it has taken so far, this government does not have the appetite to celebrate what is one of the most important moments in our history. Is this government hoping that the 1916 centenary commemoration will slip below the radar, remain out of sight and detached from the people of Ireland? We, as the living relatives of those who fought for our freedom and self-governance, cannot and will not allow this to happen. We owe it to our relatives to ensure that they are all remembered in a way that reflects the enormity of their deeds. And we cannot stand by and allow this government to either ignore or insult their legacy. Today, we call on the people of Ireland to unite with the 1916 Relatives Association to ensure that the bravery and sacrifice of the women and men of 1916 is remembered and commemorated in a manner which they truly deserve. We cannot stand idly by and allow the memory of our relatives and their extraordinary deeds to be denigrated and forgotten. So to conclude, I'm going to paraphrase the words of John F. Kennedy. And he said, "A nation reveals itself not only by the women and men it produces, but also by the women and men it honours, by the women and men it remembers." Gora míle maith.